They stole my clothes, Cowboy, and this changed everything. The sun was still low in the sky when the young woman guided her horse toward the quiet river. The morning air was cool, and mist floated above the water like a thin veil. She had been traveling for days, crossing dry land and dusty trails, and every part of her felt tired. Her clothes were covered in dirt, her hair tangled from the wind, and her body ached from long hours in the saddle. All she wanted was a moment of peace before continuing her journey. She chose this spot because it was hidden from the main trail. Tall trees surrounded the river, and thick bushes grew close to the water, offering privacy. It felt safe. She tied her horse to a nearby tree and checked the area carefully. There was no one in sight. The world seemed still, as if it was holding its breath. She took off her outer clothes and placed them neatly on a flat rock. She wrapped herself in a blanket she carried for cold nights and stepped closer to the water. The river was cold but refreshing. As she washed her face and hands, she finally felt like herself again. For the first time in days, her mind was quiet. She did not know that she was being watched. A short distance away, hidden behind trees and rocks, a few ranch hands were resting from their morning work. They had come to the river to cool off before returning to the ranch. When they noticed the horse and the clothes on the rock, curiosity pulled them closer. And they saw the woman by the river, unaware of their presence. At first, they planned to leave. But one of them laughed quietly, whispering an idea that should never have been spoken. The others hesitated, then laughed too. It was a stupid idea born from boredom and a lack of thought, but in that moment, it seemed amusing to them. They crept forward, careful not to make noise, and quickly grabbed the clothes from the rock. Within seconds, they disappeared into the trees, laughing like children who didn't understand the harm of their actions. When the woman finished washing and turned back, her heart dropped. The rock was empty. For a moment she thought she was mistaken. She looked around, stepping closer to where she had left her clothes. Panic rose in her chest. She searched the ground, the bushes, the trees. Nothing. Her clothes were gone. Her hands started to shake. The blanket was thin and not enough to protect her from the cold air or the long walk back to the trail. She called out, her voice echoing weakly through the trees. No answer came back, only the sound of the river moving slowly past her. Fear, anger, and shame mixed together inside her. She felt small and helpless in a way she never had before. This land was already hard for a woman traveling alone. Now she was trapped, unable to move forward or back without being seen. She waited, hoping the people who took her clothes would return and laugh and give them back. But no one came. The sun climbed higher and the morning grew warmer. Still, she stood there, wrapped in the blanket, trying to think clearly. Finally, she made a decision. She remembered seeing a ranch not far from the trail the day before. It was owned by a man people spoke about in low voices, a lone cowboy who kept to himself, who spoke little, and who rarely came into town. Some said he was kind. Others said he was cold. No one seemed to know him well. She had no other choice. Keeping her eyes low and her steps quick, she left the river and moved through the trees, holding the blanket tightly around herself. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked like someone watching. Her heart beat so loudly she was sure the whole world could hear it. When she reached the open land near the ranch, the fear grew stronger. The building stood alone against the wide sky, old but strong, with a fence that had seen many years. Smoke rose from the chimney, a sign that someone was inside. She stopped at the gate, unsure if she should go further. Pride told her to turn back, to find another way. But reason reminded her that there was no other way. She opened the gate and walked slowly toward the house. The cowboy was inside, repairing a broken chair. He had lived alone for years, choosing silence over company. When he heard a soft knock at the door, he frowned. Visitors were rare and never unexpected. He stood, wiped his hands on his trousers, and opened the door. He was not prepared for what he saw. A young woman stood before him, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale but her eyes strong. She looked tired, frightened, and angry all at once. For a moment they just stared at each other, both unsure what to say.
"I need help," she said finally, her voice steady despite everything she felt.
The cowboy stepped back at once, opening the door wider. He did not ask questions. He did not stare. He simply pointed inside. "Come in," he said quietly. She entered, and he closed the door behind her, giving her space. He moved to a chest near the wall and pulled out a clean shirt and a pair of trousers. He placed them on the table and turned away. "Use these," he said. She nodded, too grateful to speak. After a moment, she changed and folded the blanket carefully. When she came back to the main room, she looked like a different person. Still tired, still shaken, but no longer trapped. They sat across from each other in silence for a while. The cowboy poured water into a cup and slid it toward her. She drank slowly, feeling strength return to her body. Finally, she told him what happened. She spoke simply, without drama, but every word carried weight. The cowboy listened, his jaw tightening with each sentence. He said nothing until she finished. "That shouldn't have happened," he said at last. She looked at him surprised. Most people would have blamed her for being alone. Most people would have asked questions that hurt. But he didn't. Outside, the wind moved through the grass, carrying more than just dust. It carried rumors. Someone had already seen her enter the ranch. In a land where stories spread fast and truth moved slow, this moment would not stay hidden. Neither of them knew it yet, but what happened at the river had already changed their lives. The woman stayed at the small table holding the cup with both hands. The water was plain, but it felt like the best thing she had tasted in days. The room was quiet, except for the soft sound of the wind outside and the fire burning slowly in the corner. Everything felt strange to her, like she had stepped into someone else's life for a moment. The cowboy sat across from her, not too close, not too far. He was a man of few words, and silence was normal for him. But this silence felt different. It was heavy, filled with things neither of them knew how to say. After a while, she cleared her throat. "I won't stay long," she said.
I just needed clothes and a place to breathe.
He nodded. "You can stay until you're ready," he replied.
His voice was calm, steady, like the land outside. She looked around the room. It was simple but clean. A small bed in the corner, a wooden table, 2 chairs, and shelves filled with tools and books. It was the home of a man who lived alone, but not a careless man. Everything had a place. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Yes," he said, then added, "for a long time." She nodded, understanding more than he realized. Some people chose loneliness because the world had been unkind to them. She could see it in his eyes, something old and tired, but still strong. She finished the water and placed the cup down. "My name is Clara," she said softly. Saying her name out loud made her feel more real again, like she was no longer just a problem that needed solving. "Eli," he replied. It was the first time he had said his name to someone in weeks. They shared a small, quiet smile, and for a moment the tension faded. But peace never lasted long in places like this. A noise came from outside. Voices, laughter, boots on dry ground. Clara froze. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. She knew those sounds. She had heard them before, near the river. Her breath grew shallow. Eli noticed at once. He stood slowly and moved toward the window, careful not to make noise. He looked out and saw 2 men near the fence, talking loudly, pointing toward the house. "People from the ranch," he said quietly. Her face lost color. "They followed me?" "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe they just saw you come in." Fear returned like a storm. She stood, unsure whether to run or hide. The memory of the empty rock by the river came back, sharp and painful. She didn't want to feel that helpless again. Eli raised his hand gently. "You're safe here," he said. The words were simple, but something in his voice made her believe him. The men outside called out his name. "Ellie!" "You in there?" He opened the door and stepped outside, closing it behind him. Clara moved to the window, watching. The ranch hands smiled when they saw him, but there was something wrong in their eyes. Too curious, too amused. "We saw a woman come in," one of them said. "That's new." Eli's face stayed calm. She needed help. The men exchanged looks. One laughed. "Funny. Folks in town are already talking." Eli's jaw tightened. "Talking about what?" "About a woman showing up with nothing but a blanket," the man replied. "People start making up stories real fast." Eli took a step forward, his voice low but firm. "Then they should mind their own business." The laughter stopped. The men realized they had pushed too far. "Didn't mean anything by it," one said, raising his hands. "Just surprised, that's all." Eli did not move. "Go back to your work." After a moment, the men turned and walked away, their voices fading into the distance. Eli stood there for a long time, staring at the open land, thinking about how easily trouble found its way to his door. When he went back inside, Clara was standing near the table, her face full of worry. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to bring this to you." "You didn't," he replied. Trouble always comes. This time it just came with a face. She tried to smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. The day moved slowly after that. Eli offered her some bread and soup, and she ate like someone who hadn't had a proper meal in days. As she ate, she told him about her journey, where she had come from, why she was traveling alone, and how she had hoped to start fresh somewhere new. Eli listened without interrupting. He didn't judge, didn't question her choices.
That made her talk more than she planned. It felt good to be heard.
When the sun began to set, Clara stood and looked at the door. "I should go," she said quietly. "I don't want to cause more trouble for you." Eli shook his head. "It's not safe to travel at night. I've done worse," she replied, trying to sound brave. He paused, then spoke carefully. "You can sleep here." "I'll take the chair." She stared at him. "I couldn't ask that." "You didn't," he said. The kindness in his voice made her eyes sting. She turned away quickly, pretending to check her bag. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, as she lay on the small bed, she couldn't sleep. The house creaked softly with the wind, and the fire glowed like a watchful eye. She thought about the river, the laughter, the fear. She thought about the men at the fence, and the way they looked at her, like she was a story they could tell however they wanted. She realized something then. Her life had changed the moment her clothes were taken, but it changed again the moment she knocked on Ellie's door. Outside, the town was already building a tale, twisting it into something ugly. Inside the small house, two strangers lay awake, both knowing that tomorrow would not be easy. Morning came slowly, like it was unsure whether it wanted to arrive at all. The light crept through the small window and touched the wooden floor. Birds sang outside, but their voices sounded far away, like echoes from another world. Clara opened her eyes and lay still for a moment, trying to remember where she was. Then everything came back. The river, the missing clothes, the blanket, the ranch. Ellie. Her chest tightened and she sat up quickly. The room was quiet. The chair near the table was empty. Eli was gone. For a brief moment, fear rushed through her again. She swung her feet to the floor and stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. Then she smelled something warm and comforting. Food. She followed the smell to the door and opened it slowly. Eli was outside, near a small fire pit, stirring something in a pot. He looked up when he heard her. "You're awake," he said. She nodded, suddenly unsure what to say. "I thought you left." "I wouldn't do that," he replied simply. "Breakfast will be ready soon." She stepped outside, the cool air touching her face. The land looked different in the morning light, wide, quiet, and honest. For the first time since the river, she felt like she could breathe again. They ate together in silence, but it was not the heavy silence from before. It was calmer now, like two people sharing space without fear. After a while, Clara spoke.
"I should go today," she said. "The longer I stay, the worse it will get for you."
Eli kept stirring the pot. "You're already the talk of the place," he said. "Leaving won't stop that." She looked down at her hands. "I don't want to ruin your life." He finally looked at her. It's not ruined, he said. It's just changing. The word hung between them. After breakfast, Eli saddled her horse and checked the straps carefully. Clara watched him, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and worry. Every time someone passed by on the distant trail, her heart jumped. She could feel eyes on her, even when no one was there.
"You'll go east," Eli said, handing her the reins. "There's a small town by nightfall."
People there are decent, she nodded. Thank you for everything. She stepped closer, unsure if she should say more. The words pressed against her chest, heavy and real. I won't forget this, she said finally. Ellie gave a small nod. Neither will I. She mounted the horse and turned once more to look at him. He stood still, hands at his sides, watching her like someone who knew this moment mattered more than it seemed. Then she rode away. The trail was quiet at first, but it did not stay that way. Before she reached the bend in the road, she saw two riders coming toward her. Her heart sank. She recognized them immediately. Ranch hands, the same careless faces, the same easy laughter. They slowed their horses when they reached her. Leaving so soon? One of them said. She kept her voice steady. I have places to be. Funny, the other said, smiling too wide. People are saying you spent the night at Eli's place. She felt the heat rise in her face. People say a lot of things, she replied. They circled her slowly, their horses stepping close enough to make her nervous.
You know how this town works, one said. Once a story starts, it doesn't stop.
Move,
she said, her voice shaking just a little.
They laughed, but before either of them could say more, a voice cut through the air like a blade. That's enough. Eli rode up behind them, his horse strong and calm. His eyes were dark, his face set in a way Clara had not seen before. The men turned, surprised. We're just talking, one said. Then talk somewhere else, Eli replied. This is public land, the man said, trying to sound brave. Eli stepped closer. And she's not your business. The silence that followed was thick. The men looked at each other, then at Eli. Something in his expression told them this was not a game anymore. They turned their horses and rode off without another word. Clara let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. You didn't have to do that, she said. Yes, I did, he replied. She looked at him, her eyes shining. Now they'll talk even more. They were going to anyway, he said. At least now they'll think twice. They stood there for a moment, the dust settling around them. The land felt different now, charged with something new. You should go, Eli said gently, before more people come. She nodded, but didn't move right away. Why are you doing this? She asked. You don't even know me. Eli looked away, then back at her. Because someone should have helped you at the river, he said. And no one did. The truth of his words hit her hard. She swallowed and nodded. Then I'll go, but I'll come back one day. He gave a small, sad smile. This place will still be here. She turned her horse and rode away again, this time without stopping. But the town was already awake, and the story was already growing. By the time Clara reached the edge of the next settlement, people were staring. Whispers followed her like shadows. She heard pieces of the story as she passed by. Words twisted, changed, made worse with every telling. In their mouths, she was no longer a traveler in trouble. She was something else entirely. She stayed only long enough to buy supplies. When she left, she did not look back. That night she camped, alone, under the stars. The fire was small, but warm. She sat close to it, holding her knees, thinking about how fast life could turn upside down. One moment she had been washing at a quiet river. Now her name was a story people used for their own amusement. Tears filled her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She had cried enough. Now she needed to be strong. Back at the ranch, Eli stood at his fence, watching the road long after she disappeared. He could already feel the change in the air. When he went to town the next day for supplies, the looks confirmed it. Men stopped talking when he walked in. Women whispered behind hands. A few people shook their heads, disappointed. Others looked curious, eager for more details. Eli said nothing. When someone finally asked him directly if the story was true, he answered simply, "A woman needed help. I helped her."
"That's not how people see it," the man replied.
Eli met his eyes. "Ben, people need to see better." Word of his response spread quickly. Some respected him for it. Others judged him harder. By evening, Eli understood something important. He had crossed a line without meaning to. He had chosen a side. And even though Clara was miles away, her presence still lived in every whisper, every glance, every silence. Their lives were now tied together by a moment neither of them had chosen, but both would have to face. As Eli closed the door to his house that night, he knew one thing for certain. The easy, quiet life he once had was gone. The next few days felt heavier than any Eli had known before. The land was the same. The sky was still wide and blue. The cattle still needed care, and the fences still needed fixing. But something invisible had changed. Everywhere he went, he felt it, like eyes following him, like words hanging in the air even when no one spoke. When he rode into town for supplies, conversation stopped. People pretended to look at shelves or count coins, but their ears were open, waiting. Eli kept his head high and said nothing. Silence had always been his shield, but now it felt thin, like dry wood ready to break. At the general store, the owner, an old man named Harris, cleared his throat. "People are saying things," he said carefully, sliding a sack of flour across the counter. Eli nodded. "People always do." "This time is different," Harris replied. "You know that." Eli took the flour and placed it in his bag. "Truth doesn't change just because people don't like it." Harris looked at him for a long moment, then sighed. "You're stubborn, boy. Always have been." Eli gave a small smile. "Someone has to be." Outside, a group of men stood near the hitching post. They were the same ranch hands who had caused trouble before. Their laughter stopped when they saw him. One of them stepped forward. "You think you're better than us now?" he said. Eli tied his horse calmly. "I think you should mind your own work." The man's face hardened. "You made us look bad." "You did that yourselves," Eli replied. The air felt tight, like a storm about to break. For a moment, Eli thought fists would fly, but then someone called out from across the street, and the tension broke. The men stepped back, muttering, and Eli mounted his horse and rode away. He did not look back, but he knew the trouble was far from over. That same day, miles away, Clara reached a small farming settlement. She had hoped it would be different here. She had hoped the whispers would fade with distance. But stories traveled faster than people, and when she walked into the market, she saw the looks again. A woman pulled her child closer. Two men paused their talk to watch her pass. Clara felt the weight of it all pressing down on her chest. She bought what she needed quickly and left. Outside the town, she stopped her horse and closed her eyes. For the first time since she left Eli's ranch, she let the tears fall. They rolled down her cheeks, hot and heavy, carrying the pain she had been holding inside. "I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered to the empty land. But the land did not answer. That night, she stayed in a small barn offered by a kind old woman who saw the truth in her eyes. The woman gave her bread and a blanket and said nothing more. That simple kindness gave Clara a small piece of strength back. The next morning, Clara made a decision. Running would not save her. Silence would not clear her name. If people were going to talk, then she would give them the truth, even if they didn't want to hear it. She turned her horse around. The ride back felt longer than the ride away. Every step brought fear and courage together in her chest. She didn't know what she would say or who would listen. But she knew one thing: she could not keep living like a shadow. When she reached the town near Ellie's ranch, the sun was low. People noticed her at once. The whispers returned, louder this time. She rode straight to the open square and stopped. "I want to speak," she said, her voice shaking but strong enough to carry. People gathered slowly, curious and cautious. Eli was there too, standing near the store, frozen in surprise when he saw her. Clara stepped down from her horse. Her hands trembled, but she lifted her chin.
I was traveling alone, she began. I stopped at the river to wash.
My clothes were taken. I had no choice but to ask for help. That is the truth. Nothing more. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some faces softened. Others stayed hard. Eli moved closer, standing beside her without a word. His presence gave her strength.
She stayed at my house because it was not safe to leave, he said. If helping someone is wrong, then I will carry that blame.
Silence fell like a heavy blanket. Then a woman spoke. Who took the clothes? She asked. Clara looked toward the ranch hands. They stood at the edge of the crowd, faces pale.
It was them, Clara said. They thought it was funny. All eyes turned to the men.
One tried to speak, but no words came out. The truth, once spoken, could not be pulled back. Anger rose through the crowd. Not wild anger, but sharp, clear anger, the kind that comes when people realize they have been lied to. The ranch owner stepped forward.
Is this true?
He demanded. The men lowered their heads. Shame moved through the square like wind through dry grass. The story changed shape in that moment. The blame shifted to where it belonged. Clara felt her knees weaken. Eli reached out and steadied her.
You were brave, he said quietly.
She looked at him, tears in her eyes. I was tired of being afraid. The crowd slowly broke apart. Some people came to Clara, offering kind words. Others avoided her eyes, embarrassed. The ranch hands were taken away by their owner, their laughter gone, replaced by silence. As the square emptied, Clara and Eli stood alone.
You didn't have to come back,
Eli said. Yes, I did, she replied. For both of us. They walked together out of the square. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with soft colors. The worst part was over, but both of them knew something else had begun. The days after the truth came out felt quieter, but not in the same way as before. The silence was no longer heavy or painful. It was thoughtful, like the land itself was resting after a storm. People still talked, but the sharpness in their voices was gone. When Clara walked through town now, the eyes that followed her were different. Some were kind. Some were ashamed. Some were simply curious. But no one whispered anymore. She stayed near the town for a few days, helping the old woman who had offered her shelter before. Each morning she woke up early and worked with her hands, cleaning, cooking, fixing small things that had been broken for years. It felt good to be useful, to be normal again. At night, she sat by the small fire and thought about everything that had happened, from the quiet river to the crowded square. One evening, Ellie came to see her. She saw him before he reached the gate. He rode slowly, like he didn't want to disturb the peace. When he dismounted, they stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. The world between them felt different now, lighter, but also more serious. I wanted to see how you were doing, he said. She smiled. I'm better, thanks to you. He shook his head. You did the hardest part yourself. They walked together, just like they had after leaving the square. The air was cool, and the sky was full of stars. For a while, they talked about simple things, the weather, the work, the land, but the quiet between their words felt easy, not awkward. After a while, Clara stopped walking. I've been thinking, she said, about where I belong. Eli looked at her, waiting. I started this journey because I wanted a new life, she continued. I didn't expect it to find me like this. I thought I was running away, but maybe I was just looking for the right place. He understood what she meant, and it scared him more than he expected. You don't owe this land anything, he said gently. You should go wherever your heart tells you. She smiled at him, a soft, honest smile. My heart is confused, she said. But it's not empty anymore. They stood there, the stars watching over them like silent witnesses. The next morning, Clara went to the ranch. Ellie was fixing a fence when he saw her riding up. He rested his hands on the post, surprised. "I thought you'd left already," he said. "I almost did," she replied, "but I realized something on the road." He waited. "I don't want to keep running from a story that's already finished," she said. "I want to build something new." The words settled between them, warm and real. Eli looked around his land. The wide fields, the tired fence, the old house that had known only his footsteps for so long. He thought about the quiet nights, the long days, and the empty chair by the table. "You can stay," he said finally. "If you want to." She nodded, and in that simple movement, 100 fears faded away. Life did not change overnight, but it changed slowly, in the best ways. Clara helped around the ranch. She learned how to work the land, how to fix broken tools, how to care for animals that trusted her more each day. Eli learned how to talk more, how to share his space, how to laugh again. People noticed. At first, they watched from a distance. Then they began to greet Clara when she passed. A woman brought bread one afternoon. A child waved at her from the road. The land accepted her little by little. One evening, as the sun set, Clara and Eli sat on the porch, watching the sky turn gold. "Do you ever think about that day at the river?" Clara asked quietly. Eli nodded. "Every day." "So do I," she said. "But it doesn't hurt anymore." He looked at her. "It changed everything." She smiled. "Yes, it did." Seasons passed. The land grew and rested and grew again. The ranch became warmer, fuller, alive in a way it had never been before. Laughter lived in the walls now. Light stayed longer in the rooms. One afternoon, a traveler stopped by the gate. He looked tired, his clothes dusty from the road. Clara saw him from the house and walked out. "Are you lost?" she asked kindly. He nodded. "Just looking for water and a place to rest." She smiled and opened the gate. "Come in. You're safe here." Eli watched from the porch, a quiet smile on his face. In that moment, Clara understood the lesson her journey had taught her. Pain had brought her here, but kindness had kept her. One cruel act had changed everything, but not in the way anyone expected. It did not break her. It did not end her story. It led her home.